What's up, guys, and welcome to the NFL Week 9 player pool. We're looking at a slate featuring the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills, a game that a lot of people are going to be focused on. And how should we build around that, or how should we pivot off of that? I'm going to dig into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. Going to be taking a look at the Week 9 main slate and building some DraftKings lineups for that. Going to get into that in a second. This slate is all about the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. It's a matchup that usually ends up in monster fantasy performances, and this week should be no different. These teams usually play like it's their Super Bowl in season when they play each other, and they play each other pretty frequently, actually. So I'm going to dig into that. Make sure to hit the like button, get me to 70 likes so I can put out my favorite picks in the comment section as we get closer to lock. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking to get to 2,200 subscribers. I only need about 60 to get there. So hit that like button and subscribe button to help me get there. You want to subscribe anyways to get access to the free beta preview of the secret weapon, which is coming out in about a week or so. Getting very close to that. I'm getting it out before Thanksgiving because it's going to be a massive edge for us in just tracking down news on obscure players or random players and the studs as well. But it's really difficult sometimes on your showdown slates or when you're looking for like a cheap option to plug in to find news on some of these cheaper guys that get overlooked by the field typically. So it's going to be a huge asset for you in your DFS research, and you can get there by subscribing to the YouTube channel because the YouTube subscribers are going to get a free beta preview of that when it comes out in about a week or so. So let's dig into this slate. Basically, it's going to be a slate revolving around that Buffalo versus Kansas City game. I'll dig into that one first. This game is going to be hugely important because most of the ownership should be revolved around this. The players are relatively expensive for the main ones. We got Rashee Rice at 7,600. He's still cheap relative to I think where he should be. The way that Mahomes is playing this year and the amount of targets that he's been getting. But Ray Rice going to be a pivotal decision, 23 and 25 DraftKings points in this last couple weeks. So very important decision point here with Rashee Rice. Do we think that he's going to keep it up against Buffalo? Buffalo has been weaker against wide receivers this season, but they are still only giving up 17 DraftKings points a game to the position. So, there's still going to be like some downside to this matchup potentially. Take a look at Xavier Worthy while we're here. Xavier Worthy could be a good pivot for us, a good pivot option for us. Let me get an idea of what his ownership is, because if everybody else is focused on Rashee Rice, take a look at wide receiver. We have enough cheap options, by the way, at running back that have opened up, which are going to make it easier to stack in this game. So it's going to make it an even more important decision point on whether or not we want to focus on this game, because we do have other highly owned games on the slate, or not highly owned, but high total games on the slate that could go a little bit more overlooked. And if I'm looking at Xavier Worthy, I'm looking at a 3% ownership versus like about a 15% for Rashee Rice. Actually, both of those honestly are very low ownerships, lower than I would have anticipated, given the massiveness of this game and the way that these teams usually play each other. But Xavier Worthy is pretty cheap too. He's at 5,600. Cheap as far as his ownership, but also not a prohibitive price there by any means. Khalil Shakir is the main receiver for Buffalo. 7 targets, 9 targets in the last 3 weeks. So he's capable of getting targets, but he gets targets usually at or around the line of scrimmage. So he has to make the most out of those targets in order to put up fantasy points for us. And you can see he's put up 17 and 20 DraftKings points for us, but 5,300. That's not too bad of a price for the total of this game. This game, by the way, we're looking at a 52.5 point total with Kansas City as 1.5 point favorites in it. They're actually playing in Buffalo too, so it's good news for the Bills there. Keon Coleman, the Chiefs have only been giving up 14.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, so not the best matchup for Coleman in this one. But in a game where we're not really concerned about the overall individual matchups in this one, and more concerned with the macro perspective of this game being a high scoring game, back and forth between two teams that face each other often. Keon Coleman could be a good pivot for us at 4,500 for one of these cheaper receivers if we run into salary issues while we're building our lineups. Hollywood Brown fits in that category too. We've seen some big games out of Brown this season, but we've also seen some duds out of him. That week 1 game, he ended up with 16 targets when Xavier Worthy went down, but that's been his biggest target share so far this season. He had 8 targets a few weeks ago against Jacksonville. But Hollywood Brown, he's a guy that we could, if we're building multiple lineups, then he's a guy that we can leave in our player pool and make sure to get some exposure to him. Same with Tyquan Thornton. Thornton was on fire in the beginning part of the season. Like, he was the deep target for Mahomes when Mahomes started to come alive again from a fantasy perspective. And now we see him at 3,600. Like, he's going to be low owned as well. People have kind of forgotten about him, but in a game like this, where it's going to be super competitive, this is another option that we will have to use in this one. You can see the last big game that he had was in week 5. He scored 12 DraftKings points against Jacksonville in a game that they lost. So, these blowout games, he's not necessarily needed in, but in these tight games, we can see potential opportunities for Tyquan Thornton. And this could be like a sneaky place to use Tyquan Thornton. Been on fire with some of these sneakier picks. I had Greg Dulcich as a pick on the Showdown episode a couple nights ago, and he ended up being a needed component for the optimal lineup that week. I believe we were the first. I was the first one to talk about him. I put my Showdown show out the day before that came out, noticing the tight end matchup for the Dolphins in that one, and then also with the fact that Julian Hill was going to be out in that game. Dulcich just joined the Dolphins, and he found himself in a great spot. And he was under 10% owned in that Showdown slate, which is tough to do in a Showdown slate. So Gabe Davis is back on the Bills. He has not played yet. He's not going to play on Sunday either, so we don't have Gabe Davis yet. But he's had some big games in this matchup in the past. Juju Smith-Schuster, 3,400. Who's another guy? Let's take a look over at the snap counts for these guys. Going to go to wide receiver here. Looking over at, always does this when it logs me out. Looking over at Fantasy Pros for this information. Give me a second to log in here, guys. All right, so we're looking over at Fantasy Pros. We can get an idea of where these snap counts were for these wide receivers for Kansas City. So maybe if we have a preference for who we want to plug into our lineups, if we're looking to pivot away from some of those higher owned guys, we got 84% for Worthy. Taekwon was way down to 7% snap count in his last game. We had Juju at 30, Marquise Brown at 38, and then Rashid Rice at 86. So it's basically Rice and Worthy, but Taekwon has had 33%, 27%. He had 33% the first week with Rashid Rice back, but Rashid Rice had a very low count in that one at about 41%. When he bumped up to 86, Taekwon looks like he took the biggest hit, going down from 33 to 7% snap count. So that's pretty significant there for Rashid Rice and Tyquan Thornton, or more significant for Tyquan Thornton losing some of that work. I don't really see anyone else that I would target in this game. The Buffalo plays are way too thin. Smith-Schuster, I mentioned that. Let's go to tight ends. Kelsey and Kincaid are both in play. Kelsey's been doing pretty well these last few weeks. I talked about him as a captain option on the showdown slate a couple nights ago, or at least one of my favorite plays on the slate. He's been looking good recently. It looks like he has been rejuvenated a little bit this year. And now that they have enough attention to spread around for the defense, like it looks like Travis Kelce has been getting more targets and he's been able to do stuff with it. We've had a 22 DraftKings point, 14 and a 19 in the last 4 weeks. So, he's been definitely in play. And as far as the matchup, let's see, the Chiefs are giving up, they're only giving up 5 points. The Bills are only giving up 5.7 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So, not the best matchup there for Kelce. But like I said, like with this matchup, if we think that we want to target it, if we think it's going to hit that Vegas total, then Kelce is definitely in play. And there's a case to be made against this matchup hitting that Vegas total too. And we'll get into that in a second. With Kincaid, he's had some big weeks too. We've played him a lot on showdown slates, and he's come through for us a lot. Had him as a captain on a couple of those ones where he ended up going off. But Kincaid is in play for us. Same situation. He's got a bad matchup on paper with the Chiefs only giving up 8.3 DraftKings points. But, Chiefs have been vulnerable in the in the slot in the pass and the tight end versus the tight end position, basically in the middle of the field. So Kincaid could definitely be in play for us this week. Let's take a look at some of these injuries while I remember it. If we look over at the Buffalo Bills, we'll check out the Bills first. Let's see. It's got a weird depth chart for me. Let's check out the Chiefs first. All right, so the Chiefs, we're looking at some damage to the offensive line. We're missing Josh Simmons. We're also Jalen Moore is questionable, and Trey Smith is also questionable. Pacheco is out in this one, by the way. Keep that in mind. We got Kareem Hunt and Brashad Smith who should benefit from that, and we might see Elijah Mitchell for the first time, maybe this season. I can't remember if he's played yet. The defense, we got a lot of guys on IR. Najee Johnson, I think, is the most significant there. But those are the defensive line. So looks overall, though, with the main guys are pretty healthy. Janarius Robinson is also on IR. We got a cornerback on IR too, and Eric Scott. But for the most part, the starters are healthy for this Kansas City defense, and Kansas City's defense has been playing really well. So we can build a case here for fading this game. I don't know why it's not showing me the rest of the Bills depth chart here, but we're missing as far as the defense. Daquan Jones is out. Shaq Thompson is out. Ed Oliver is on IR. TJ Sanders on IR as well. Got a bunch of guys. DeMar Hamlin on IR. Teron Johnson is questionable. Taylor Rapp is on IR. So a bunch of these guys on the Bills are on IR or hurt. So that doesn't set up very well for the Bills in this game. And if we're looking at the direct matchup, the Chiefs are only allowing 14.9 DraftKings points to the quarterback position, and the Bills are only allowing 14. So we got two defenses that have been playing well. The Chiefs have only been allowing 18.1 to running backs. So, James Cook doesn't have a good matchup either. None of the wide receivers, the wide receivers on Buffalo are all scrubs, but they all have bad matchups too, with the Chiefs only giving up 14.7 DraftKings points to wideouts and 6.2 to the slot position. And then they're only giving up 8.3 to the tight end position as well. So all of this lines up negatively for the matchup for Buffalo. You're basically just hoping that Josh Allen can overcome a bad matchup. The only good matchup for the Chiefs against Buffalo's defense is the running back, where the Chiefs have been given, or the Bills have been giving out 24.7. But like I said, Pacheco is out. So, then we got a timeshare between Kareem Hunt and Rashad Smith to sort out. We'll take a look at that real quick. Hunt, basically do the opposite of what I say with Hunt, because, every time I fade the guy, he goes off. He ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in that game against Washington, where I was saying to start Rashad Smith. And, like any game that I fade him, like he goes off on, stems back to like week where I had faded him against Tampa Bay in a showdown slate. I was up 118K leading to the last play of overtime. And then Kareem Hunt ended up scoring a touchdown and knocking me down from 118K to $800. So I just cannot stand Kareem Hunt in general. And this is a good matchup for him. He's only 4,700. He's going to be one of those popular cheap options. Get an idea of his ownership. Kareem Hunt's going to be at, I see him at 5.6% projected ownership, but I'm not buying that. I think he's going to be more popular at 4,700 in the highest total in the slate. But if he is at 5.6, then Kareem Hunt is going to be thoroughly in play. And when we build lineups, we can play for that scenario, because he's the perfect pivot off of this game, where it's got a high total and a tight spread, but the matchups are terrible for these offenses. Allen and Mahomes, goes without saying. Mahomes, over 20 DraftKings points in all but one game. We could see maybe low 20s for Mahomes if the matchup holds up. With Allen, we've seen Allen put up duds in the past. He's had an 11.8 and 17.4 weeks this season, and he hasn't been, the usual Allen that we're used to. He had that 41.8 DraftKings point week in week 1, but he hasn't done much outside of that. That was against Baltimore in a game where he had to play hero ball, but Baltimore's defense sucks. So, he's facing his toughest probably defense yet on the season. I'm not buying that this game's going to shoot out, like looking at these individual matchups. So I think we can definitely get away from this game a little bit if we want to. All right, so let's skip over this game, or the rest of this. We've gone over the whole thing here. Let's go over to Chicago versus Cincinnati. Reminder, hit that like button. Give me 270 likes so I can put my favorite plays in the comment section as we get closer to lock. This is a game where we are looking at a total of 51.5 points. Another popular game, most likely. We got a 2.5-point spread in this one, just to get an idea of some of the ownership on this one. Going to take a look at Chicago and Cincy. The highest owned guys on this slate are going to be Kyle Monangai, and that makes sense because DeAndre Swift is out and Roshan Johnson is also out, so they don't even have a backup for him. Let's take a look at the injury report for this game. If we're looking at the Chicago Bears first, all right, so if we're looking at the Chicago Bears first, we can see that DeAndre Swift is out, Roshan Johnson is out, Luther Burden is out. That's going to thin it out at the receiver position. Braxton Jones, their left tackle, is out. And Kieran Amigzagi is out as well as their right guard. So we got a bunch of guys that are out for the Chicago Bears. Let's take a look at their defense. We're missing Robinson is out. Shamar Turner is out. A couple linebackers are out. One linebacker is out. We're missing Jalen Johnson is still out. Terrell Smith is on IR. And Kyler Gordon is on IR too. So banged up with Chicago, which we like to see that for the defense because we want an easier matchup for Cincinnati if we want to target this game. Joe Flacco has a shoulder injury and he's questionable. So if he is out, that's going to be trouble for Cincinnati. Looking at the offensive line, looks like we got some depth issues on the offensive line, but what else is new for Cincinnati? Flacco's been getting the ball out at a very fast pace. We're looking at Trey Hendrickson, doubtful. Logan Wilson, doubtful. So their defense is just banged up. So Chicago's going to be able to tee up on these guys, and it's going to be a matter of can Cincinnati respond. And Chicago's defense is giving up. Let's get a look here. Giving up 19.6 DraftKings points to the quarterback position and 16.5 to wideouts. So the quarterback position is a great matchup, but wideouts don't have a best matchup against Chicago, only getting 16.5. But we're talking about wideouts, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase here. They're giving up 12.9 to the slot, so they've been vulnerable to the slot. They've also been vulnerable to the tight end position, giving up 14.6. In addition to the running back position, giving up 23 DraftKings points. So Chicago's really only been good against wideouts. And if we're looking over at DraftKings, Jamar Chase has been targeted at the line of scrimmage a lot with Joe Flacco because he's getting the ball out quick to Jamar Chase. 41 DraftKings points last week or in week 7. He had 25 DraftKings points in week 6. So Jamar Chase in week 8, he had 21.1 DraftKings points. So he's been on a tear the last 4 weeks. He had 32 against Detroit as well. So Jamar Chase has been on a tear. He's definitely in play. Let me get an idea of his ownership. Jamar Chase, we're looking at about 32%. So he's not people are going to be targeting him, unfortunately. With Odunze, he was on the injury report in the beginning of the week, but looks like he's off of it now. He's had a heel issue. At one point, like every single one of these receivers was on the injury report for Chicago. So Looks like I don't see any designations for them anymore, which is good. DJ Moore, another guy I'd be interested in, even though he hasn't done anything like all season. He's been a complete dud this season, but he's still in play, especially with Luther Burden out. T. Higgins, that matchup I told you about, is a little bit tougher against the defense of Chicago. Looking at the individual matchups for Chicago as well, I skipped over that. The biggest weakness against Cincinnati's versus the running back, they've been giving up 33.3 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. That's why Monangai is going to be so popular this week. They've been giving up 21.7 to the tight end position. So Loveland should be popular as a tight end, but Cole Kmet looks like he's back this week. But the tight ends have not done much of anything this year versus in general. Like with Loveland, we're looking at a 3,300 salary, but he has not scored above 7 DraftKings points. And with Kmet, we've had like 2 weeks over 7 DraftKings points. So they haven't been using their tight end yet. But, this matchup is too good for tight ends, so maybe we see something out of it. That could also benefit DJ Moore, who's running a lot out of the slot and, in the middle of the field. So maybe we see DJ Moore break out a little bit this season finally for us. Zacchaeus is also the slot receiver, the primary slot receiver. 10 DraftKings points last week. He's been targeted a decent amount, but he just hasn't delivered anything with those targets. Caleb Williams, he's had a couple duds recently, but he started off the season pretty hot with 24, 18, and 29 DraftKings points, and he's been terrible ever since, except for a 19 DraftKings point week. But they're winning games, so they haven't really needed him, it seems. Flacco has been on fire with Cincy. We're hoping to get Flacco in for this game. Flacco's availability is going to impact the entire slate probably with people's decision making. Looking at Flacco's ownership, I'm seeing 5.2% owned. He'd be perfect, perfect guy to pivot to this week if he ends up playing. So I do like this Cincinnati-Chicago game. High total, and it's going to be competitive, a 2.5 point spread, 51.5 point total. So this game should be good. Minnesota-Detroit, we're looking at McCarthy back this week. Wentz goes on IR. McCarthy comes back, but he's been terrible. He had a 23-point week against Chicago in week 1. After that, 5.8 DraftKings point, but he just looked awful in most of the Chicago game. He came alive in the second half, and he looked terrible throughout this Atlanta game. Not a big fan of McCarthy. He looks like Zach Wilson, and he plays, kind of like Zach Wilson. Like I'm not on McCarthy at all. The Lions on top of it, they've been giving up 18.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So it's a decent matchup for him, but I just don't like this quarterback. With Goff, he has yet to have a decent, he had a 37-point week, but it's been his only decent week so far this season. We have a 21 DraftKings point week from 2. This game where they're 8.5 point favorites. If they take a big lead through the pass game in the beginning of this, and Goff is able to rack up points that way, that would be one thing. But really, it's tough to get on board with the Lions passing game in this one. As far as, let's see, running backs, the Vikings The Lions have been good against running backs as usual. They're only giving up 16.8 DraftKings points, so that kind of takes Mason and Jones out of it for me. I didn't really like them anyways this week. If we're looking at the wideouts have had the best matchup against Detroit, where Detroit's giving up 23.3 DraftKings points to the wideouts. Let's take a look at their injury report, see if we got anything with this Detroit defense this week. Okay, so Kirby Joseph is out. DJ Reed is out. Daniel Thomas is out. Khalil Dorsey, Ezekiel Turner, basically half their defense is on IR or out. Rakestraw is still out. So, pretty rough shape for this Detroit defense. What about their offense? A lot of their offensive line, the depth is on IR. So Taylor Decker also is questionable. So pretty banged up Detroit here. Let's take a look at Minnesota. Darisaw is still questionable. He has not been playing full games recently. Josh Oliver is out for tight ends. That's good news for TJ Hawkinson. At least he can't poach a touchdown from him. Like I said, Wentz is on IR. A few other guys. Ryan Kelly, I believe he's the starting center. He's on IR. Van Ginkel is questionable. He was out a couple weeks ago. Okuda is out. So banged up a little bit on this defense here. But considering the matchup and the point total here, I think the best guys to target on Detroit are obviously going to be the running backs. And that's going to be Gibbs, who might go overlooked this week, honestly. 39.8 DraftKings points his last game. Like, Gibbs has been pretty much on fire this season. That 39.8, he's had 26.9, 19.5. He had that one dud in week 6 with a 7.5 DraftKings point week against Kansas City. If we're looking at Montgomery had a big week versus Baltimore in week 3, but he had an 18-point week in week 5. For 5K, he might be worth starting if we think that the game script will put more work for Montgomery. But really, like, Gibbs has been getting his highest target share or his highest touch share of his career here and usage of his career. So I'm definitely liking Gibbs as a pivot, maybe off McCaffrey or something like that. McCaffrey is expected to be popular this week. Let's take a look at some of these receivers. St. Brown has typically done well in this matchup. We've seen a lot of 20-point weeks out of St. Brown. He's been on a tear. So St. Brown is definitely going to be in play this week against a Minnesota team that's been weaker against wideouts than the slot. They've only been giving up 6.6 DraftKings points a game to the slot, but I think that the matchup here favors St. Brown, at least historically. Justin Jefferson, he's got that good matchup that I talked about with the Lions giving up 23.3 DraftKings points a game to the wideouts. He benefits from that, and so does Addison. But the problem with these guys is J.J. McCarthy. Is he going to be able to support these guys? Jameson Williams has that same matchup against Minnesota where they're giving up 20.4 DraftKings points to wideouts. So he has the more favorable between him and Amon-Ra, but historically Amon-Ra has been targeted in this matchup. They are coming off a bye, though, so maybe they decide to get Jameson Williams more involved like he was last season. Not really interested in these lower end guys. And then Laporta, he's been decent this year. He's in play at 4,300. I don't think that price is too bad for Laporta, and they're giving up 13.6 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. On the other side, Hawkinson missing Oliver sets him up a little bit better. Maybe he can actually pull off a touchdown for us. But 3,400 is his price, and the matchup is middling, so he's not in a bad matchup. So Hawkinson, if you wanted to stack this game with a run back, could be in play this week. Carolina versus Green Bay. This one we're looking at a total of 43.5 with Green Bay as 13.5 point favorites. The Panthers were weak against running back for the first time pretty much last week. And Josh Jacobs will be set up here with a nice game script. The Panthers also giving up 15.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, which is setting up for Kraft, who's been basically the best pass catcher on this offense. He's only at 5,700, 36 DraftKings points. We had him in the captain on the showdown slate a couple games ago or last week, and came through for us with that 36-point week. Another reason to hit that like button. I believe Kraft, I had him in the captain in my comment section. So Kraft paid off big time for us there, or at least I had him on the show. I can't remember how that went down. Ted McMillan against this Green Bay defense. They're giving up 24 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. So, McMillan is in good shape there. But the problem is Bryce Young is only targeting him at a lower rate than Andy Dalton was, and Bryce Young should be back this week. So Young against Green Bay, I would not take that bet. I think really like Kraft and Josh Jacobs are the guys that I like in this matchup, and then I like the Packers D against the Panthers. I don't mind going Ted McMillan though in this one with that matchup that they have set up. The tight ends have a good setup against Green Bay too, but I've tried them a few times already and they just have not paid off. If you wanted to, I'd probably lean towards Jatavian Sanders because I feel like he's going to have a breakout week at some point, but I just don't trust him. He's at 2,800. We saw 3 targets. We saw 9 targets in week 2, but that's been his biggest week of the season so far. Denver versus Houston. I have zero interest in this game really, apart from defenses. It's a 40.5 point total, 1.5 point spread. With those close spreads, we could see something happen, but none of the matchups are good for either team here. So I'm more interested in the defense. I don't mind Broncos defense. I don't mind Texans defense in this matchup. Atlanta versus New England. This one, 45.5 point total with New England's 4.5 point favorites. Drake May's been on fire. 27 DraftKings points. Only 1 week really under that. 2 weeks under 20 DraftKings points. So I like Drake May a lot, but Atlanta is giving up only 14.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. They are playing in New England, though, and Atlanta's been vulnerable in spurts this season, so I don't hate using May here if we wanted to. He's at 6,500, though, so he's getting expensive. Penix on the other side should be back this week. He's an upgrade over what we saw out of Cousins last week, but Penix has not been, necessarily living up to expectations. A couple weeks under 10 DraftKings points, and then he had a 14 DraftKings point week. and a 13 DraftKings point week, but he has had a couple over 20. But New England has been giving up only 16.2 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Not really buying this game here. Although I will say that we get a cheap running back option in a decent matchup with the Falcons giving up 23.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We got Travion Henderson. We'll take a look at the depth chart over on ESPN and take a look at what the running back situation is looking like for New England this week. We got Stevenson out. Antonio Gibson still on IR. So we got Travion Henderson set up, basically teed up to have a big week. Got a couple injuries on the offensive line as well. Fullback Brock Lampy is out, and Durant is out at right guard. Otherwise, like, the defense is pretty healthy. Yeah, if we're looking over at the Atlanta Falcons, couple injuries on the offense here. Storm Norton at left tackle. Defense is banged up, though. We got Zach Harrison out. Leonard Floyd is questionable. Jalen Walker is questionable. Jesse Bates is questionable. Billy Bowman is out at nickel. That'll be significant for our slot receiver on New England. We'll take a look there in a second. Clark Phillips is on IR. Malik Verdon is out. So they're banged up at safety too. So could be interesting there for Hunter Henry. A lot of injuries here on Atlanta. As far as the tight end matchup, Atlanta's been good, only giving up 4.1 DraftKings points to the tight end position. So maybe not so much on Hunter Henry, but they've been giving up 23.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. That's one of the best matchups you can get. And Travion Henderson is teed up in this one at only 4,900. So really good matchup. We got a lot of value here at running back, and I think people are going to jam in that Bills-Chiefs game, but I don't like the matchups in that Bills-Chiefs game. So I think we can probably find something else that we can focus on here. Bijan against New England, they're giving up 17.5 DraftKings points to the running back position, but Bijan should be pretty matchup proof. Couple weeks over 30 DraftKings points already this season. He's just been on a tear. So love Bijan. Wide receivers. Both sides have middling matchups on wide receivers. Atlanta giving up 19 and New England giving up 18. So, Drake London will be in play. Diggs has been running a lot out of the slot, I believe. 43% of his routes out of the slot. So Diggs is in play for us here with that slot matchup that I mentioned, and he's at 5,700. So if you're looking for a stacking partner for Drake May, or if you want to play a couple pieces on this offense, we got Drake May, we got Stephon Diggs, and we got Travion Henderson all in decent matchups this week. Booty, not so much interested in Booty. Although, he's done well this year. A few weeks in a row with decent DraftKings weeks, but he's getting up there at 5K. Darnell Mooney, him being in reduces the workload for Drake May. And going against New England, I don't know if he would be against Gonzalez there. But I don't see advantageous matchup for anyone apart from let's see. Actually, yeah, Mooney's got a pretty decent matchup. He's lining up on the left side of the field primarily, where the opposing right cornerback has been pretty weak. From a DVOA perspective, it's a top 10 matchup there for Mooney as far as these right cornerbacks go. So Mooney might be in play. I'm not too interested in him, though. He seems a little bit thin for me. Douglas would be the other slot receiver that might be interesting. And Pitts, I like. I like Pitts in this matchup. He might be a good one-off even. If you wanted to, not even one-off, but like if you wanted to do Travion Henderson and run him back with Pitts, I don't mind doing that either for a skinny stack. With San Francisco versus the Giants, this game we're looking at let's see. This one could be interesting. This is a 48.5 point total with San Francisco as 2.5 point favorites in this one. We're looking at Jackson Dart losing his top weapon basically last week. But look at these fantasy points he's been putting up as a rookie since he started. He's basically been hovering around 20 or above 20. He's at 5,200, so he's getting a little bit more pricey. But he just lost Cam Scatterbo, who was a primary weapon for the Giants. So that sucks because this would be a perfect place to stack them. But, maybe we're getting an opportunity here to play Jackson Dart at a little bit of a discount as far as ownership goes. Let's see. Looking at the quarterback position, I'm seeing Jackson Dart coming in well below where I would. Oh, no, he's coming in. He's coming in as the highest owned. My bad. So he's at 13% ownership. So nothing sneaky about Dart this week. He gets this matchup against the 49ers. 49ers are giving up 16.6 DraftKings points a game. They're giving up 14 to the slot. So the primary weapon for Dart would be Wan'Dale Robinson in this one. They're also giving up 22.7 to the running back position. So Tyrone Tracy, who now gets that running back position to himself with Scatterbo and Eric Gray out. He got Singletary there as competition. Malik Neighbors on IR. We're looking at a right tackle who's doubtful for the Giants. Offensive line banged up. Bellinger is doubtful, so Theo Johnson, that tees him up a bit. On the defense, we're looking at Adebo is out. Flott is out, so they're missing both starting cornerbacks here. I'm liking San Francisco a lot better than the matchup for the Giants here. Look at all this damage to the defense of New York. On top of being like a not great defense to begin with, at least not great for performance. They look great on paper. With the other side, we're looking at Bryce Huff out. So we got a couple of the defensive ends out. Only Robert Beal is left. Jordan Elliott is questionable. Got a couple guys questionable on that defensive line as well. Fred Warner is out for the linebacker. That's been a hit to them, but they've still been good against the tight end, even with Fred Warner out. Trey Tomlinson on IR. Jacob Robinson also on IR. Let's take a look at football guys over here, and let's see what teams have been doing, the tight ends have been doing against San Francisco without without let's see, what have they been doing? So Football Guys has this pretty cool feature, game logs against. You can go versus, like with the position versus the team. So I'm looking at San Francisco here. I want to go to tight ends. And since Fred Warner has been out, he's been out a couple weeks now. We've seen Kyle Pitts targeted 10 times in week 7 for 62. Warner actually also got a target there. Dalton Schultz and Harrison Bryant, complete dud when they faced off against them. And then, we haven't really seen much of anything out of these tight ends for for the Rams either. But judging on what Pitts did, against them, yeah, I mean, you could make a case for Theo Johnson with reduced competition for targets. As far as the points they've given up, they've been middling. 13 or 12 DraftKings points a game is what they're giving up to tight ends. So Theo has a middling matchup. Kittle, you can say the same about. He's got a pretty middling matchup too. Let's go back and look at those injuries to the Giants again. See if any of that is favorable to Kittle here. Yeah, the safety, we're missing Javon Holland, and we got some banged up safeties here. So that sets up Kittle to have a decent game at 4,800. Like I said, if I'm stacking this game, I'm tending to lean more towards stacking the San Francisco side of things. I think Mac Jones has been named the starter already. I see Purdy is questionable. Yeah, so Mac Jones is going to be starting again. He's at 5K. 19 DraftKings points, 25, 14, 22. We've seen some good weeks out of Mac Jones. And Christian McCaffrey is teed up as well. Christian McCaffrey in this matchup against New York, that's giving up 24.7 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We could do a San Francisco stack here and hope that Jackson Dart's able to kind of keep up with these guys. So we'll dig into that when we get more into this. But there's plenty of good options here on San Francisco side when people are leaning in on that New York side. So defense, Giants are pretty cheap if you wanted to use them against San Francisco. Actually, before I go on to this next game, we also got with the wide receivers, San Francisco, the matchup against New York, they're giving up 20.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 11.8 to slots. So both of those are middling. Pearsall out again. Jesus, that guy out since week 4, basically. So we've been missing out on tons of upside with Pearsall. Bourne coming back down to earth the last couple weeks, but we still have those 22-point weeks that we had. Jennings, 7 targets in each of the last 2 games. Maybe we see something out of Jennings. He had a tough matchup against Houston and, on paper, a tough matchup against Atlanta. So understandable why he might not have done anything against them. Against New Orleans, he had 20 DraftKings points. So we might see something out of Jennings this week if we wanted to go there. All right, going to Indy, Pittsburgh. I like this game. This game, we are looking at a 50.5 point total with Indy as 3.5 point favorites. Let me get an idea what the ownership is looking like on this one. Daniel Jones is under 10%. And on the other side, Rodgers, not really too interested in Rodgers, but he's down at that 2.7%. If Indy's pushing Rodgers in this one, though, Rodgers has not been a bad quarterback this season. We could see one of those 4 touchdown weeks out of Rodgers this week. He's at 5,800 though. He's expensive. 16-8, 24-6, 17-5, and then a bunch of 12 pointers. But he had a big week 1 too. I just can't scroll down to it. Week 1, 25 DraftKings points. So I mean that's pretty much his ceiling this year. 5,800 is a little bit pricey for him. Daniel Jones, 6,200. I like him better. Had a bunch of 20 plus DraftKings points weeks, 29 in week 1. He hasn't been pushed really in a few weeks, apart from against Arizona. So we haven't seen him pushed in a while. So we could see a big week here out of Daniel Jones if Rodgers can keep pace with him. And we're looking at some matchups that look good. The Pittsburgh's only been giving out 20 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, but he was interviewed a couple weeks ago. The head coach of Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, at halftime. I can't remember the matchup, but the running back, I think it was versus Cincy, and the running back was not, Chase Brown was not doing much of anything, and Tomlin was asked what his primary objective was, and his primary objective after halftime was to stop the run. And that was a game where the run wasn't doing anything against them. So, they're going to be focused here on Jonathan Taylor, which opens us up to pivot over to Daniel Jones and this wide receiver matchup where Pittsburgh's giving up 32.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, which sets up Pittman, who's been at 23 and 20 the last couple weeks, sets up Downs. Pittsburgh's been giving up 10.3 DraftKings points to the slot, so maybe not so much Downs, but Alec Pierce is set up here as well to potentially have a decent game. And the tight end, Pittsburgh's been giving up 19.5 DraftKings points to the tight end position. And that's where we have Tyler Warren teed up. Looking at Pittsburgh's tight ends. Yeah, this is where I targeted Tucker Kraft in the captain last week. So we got Tyler Warren in that matchup this week. And let's see. Yeah, I mean, I like the whole stack over on the Pittsburgh side. And as far as the side against Indy's been giving up 25.4 to the wideouts and 16.1 to slot. So we got both DK Metcalf teed up here, and we have Calvin Austin teed up too. Austin, 6 targets last week against Green Bay, didn't really do anything. He's had one big week this season, and it's not even that big. He only had 17 DraftKings points, but he is in play this week for us. So I do like this game. I think this game has some shootout potential for us, sloppy shootout potentially in this one. Chargers versus Tennessee, looking at a 43.5 point total with LA as 9.5 point favorites. Let's check out how banged up these teams are. We'll go to the Chargers first. Kamani Vidal could be the guy, teed up in this one. We're missing Haskins, Hampton, and Harris. So basically Vidal has it to himself. The coaches were talking about him like he's a lead back again. 22 DraftKings points last week. He had 25.8 a couple weeks ago. His price is up there, though, at 6,300. But he's got the matchup and he's got the setup, the game script. So Vidal is definitely in play. Pollard, we're talking about as a let's finish up the injuries here before we get into Pollard. Looking at IR for most of Los Angeles defense, missing the nickelback starter, Dean Leonard on IR. Just a lot of guys on IR here for the defense of the Chargers, so a lot of depth problem going to be there. As far as Tennessee, Calvin Ridley is out. So they're going to be having trouble pushing it. Jeffrey Simmons is out. Man, this is screaming Kamani Vidal. Arden Key is out. So they got a linebacker out. They got a bunch of guys out. Ladarius Sneed on IR. I think they just traded one of their top cornerbacks too. Xavier Woods is out. Just like Tennessee's basically given up on the season. Probably going to try and draft an offensive lineman next season. So, yeah, I don't think that they're going to be able to put up a fight, and I think that Vidal is the guy that I'd be interested here and get an idea of what his ownership is going to be. Maybe we can get some discounted ownership here. Yeah, now he's at 18%, so he's still pretty highly owned, even with all these running backs that are going to be in play this week. So that's really it for this game. Rams, New Orleans, we got another blowout situation on this one. Looking at a 43.5 point total, 14.5 point favorites for the Rams. Take a look at the injury report real quick. See where we can get some edge on our Rams here. First, let's take a look at the Rams injuries. Tutu Atwell is on IR. Darius Williams is doubtful. Left cornerback. Witherspoon is still on IR. I think this is I think Kobe Durant. They picked him up from Tennessee, I believe. I'm not even seeing our guy Forbes. Oh, Forbes is been bumped down to third on the depth chart. But we do see Williams is doubtful. So we still do have some Forbes left. So Forbes is on the left. So we'll see who's on the right side with Tennessee. The left side. Maybe it's DK. DK, I had him last week, talked to him up, and he ended up having a big week for us. Let's go back over here real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong game. DK, let's see. DK playing in that against that Chargers defense. Let me talk about him, why I brought him up. So against that Chargers defense, like DK doesn't have a terrible matchup. They're giving up 18 DraftKings points to wideouts, a game where they should be throwing it. If you're looking for a run back for Vidal, I don't mind going to DK. Now back to this New Orleans game here versus the Rams. Nakua, he should get a decent amount of targets even in a blowout situation. But, we saw versus Baltimore, he only had 4.8 DraftKings points. He's been banged up, so maybe they decide to rest him a little bit earlier in this one. But still capable of putting up points for us. Adams, same situation. He might be used less in the second half, but capable of putting up points for us. The matchup against the Rams, uh, the guy lining up on the left the most is Olave. We're looking at a new quarterback here, though. Let's take a look at New Orleans over here. With New Orleans, they've decided to bench Spencer Rattler. I didn't think Rattler had been playing too badly given the circumstances, but now Shao is going to be the starting quarterback here. Questionable for Amara, questionable Shaheed, bunch of guys on IR on the offense. I mean, they're just phoning it in at this point for the season. They want to see what they have in Shao, so they know if they have to draft a quarterback next season. So the target for Shao, I believe there's a shower narrative with Juwan Johnson. I think they went to school together and they were actually roommates. Let me double check that. I read that somewhere. All right, so they were roommates at the University of Oregon. So there's a shower narrative there if you want to use it. As far as the matchup, the Rams are giving out 12.9 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So, do what you will with that information. All right, let's move on to not really interested in any of the tight ends on the other side. I mean, Kyron Williams in a massive favorite at home. Like we can expect him to have a decent game. Looking at 18% ownership with him too. And, he hasn't been that impressive. And we've been seeing Corum take on more work. So maybe Corum gets in this game early to relieve Kyron. But other than that, like just the basics in this one, Nakua and Adams, you can start them if you want, but Nakua is expensive and might not play the fourth quarter. And Johnson has been targeted by Shao, or not targeted by Shao, but he was roommates with Shao in college. 3,900 for the Rams D, pretty expensive. Jacksonville versus Las Vegas. Stick with the defense here. I like this Raiders D in this one. I think the Jags are just terrible. We're looking at a point total of 43.5 points with Jacksonville as 2.5-point favorites. Jacksonville has just been putrid this year. Like every time try to go to Trevor Lawrence, he just cannot get the ball to his guys, but he's been putting up DraftKings points. Despite that, he had that 28-point week. He ran two touchdowns in that week. He's been putting up DraftKings points. I don't know where the hell it comes from, though, because his players, we look at his players, wideouts. Brian Thomas had a 23-point week. That's about it. We're looking at Travis Hunter now on IR. He did have a 27 DraftKings point week, so he finally broke out, but then he goes straight to IR after it. Diami Brown has not done anything. He had that week 2 week. That was pretty good. Parker Washington might be a guy worth being interested in. 10 targets last week, and Travis Hunter is out in this one on IR now. Let's take a look at Jacksonville's injuries while we're talking about that. So Tim Patrick is out. Cephas is out. Travis Hunter is out. A couple tight ends are out. Cooper Hodges. On the defense, we're missing a few guys. Devin Lloyd is questionable. Looking at Vegas. Not too much damage here on Vegas. They've just been terrible. So, two bad teams facing off against each other. I don't see really sloppy shootout potential here. Parker Washington, I might have interest in. I'm not interested in any of the running backs in this one. We do have a decent matchup for the wideouts. So if you want to go Brian Thomas, Vegas has been giving out 23 DraftKings points. If you want to go, I guess, with Trey Tucker, then Jacksonville's been giving out 30.5 DraftKings points a game. So that's like about as good a matchup as you can get. And then in the slot, Jacksonville has an advantage in the slot with Raiders giving up 17 DraftKings points a game. We do see the return, and that's Parker Washington, by the way, I believe, of Brock Bowers this week. Jacksonville's been giving up only 14 DraftKings points to the tight end position. So, take him or leave him with Brock Bowers. He's capable of obviously putting up a big week. He's at 5K, though. He's pretty expensive. I like both defenses in that game. Buffalo versus Kansas City. Already talked about that one. So let's move on to the lineup building. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me to 70 likes so I can put my favorite picks in the comment section. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 2,200. I only need about 70 more to get there. Sign up for an Underdog account while we're here. Use the promo code SEEK. And on your first $5 play over on Underdog, you're going to get a $100 bonus in playing money over there for Underdog. So make sure to use the promo code SEEK. That's SEEK. And I'll put out an Underdog video at some point today as well to help you guys get something that you might want to put that $5 play on in order to earn that instant $100 of playing cash there. All right, so let's go to the games here. I'm going to target that Chicago-Cincy game first, I think. Well, you know what? Let's do a Kansas City-Buffalo game because I think that people are going to be wanting to use that. I'm going to go with Mahomes. I'm going to go with James Cook as my running back. But first, let's get to that in a minute. Let's put him in the flex. Let's get Cook in there in the flex. And I'm going to get Rashid Rice in there because if I'm playing this game, those are the main guys that I want. So this is what my stack in this game might look like. Something pretty simple. If we're going to use some cheap running backs here, we got Monangai. And let's see who else we got. Let's get Stevenson from the Patriots in here. Wait. Oh, Ramondre Stevenson's out. Henderson is what I meant. Thought there was going to be a super cheap guy on the Patriots for a minute there. So we got Mahomes, Monangai, Henderson, Rice, and Cook in there so far. Let's go to defense. Let's pick a cheap defense. Let's go with the Raiders. Leaves us with 5,300 per guy. For tight end, let's get Pitts in there. Leaves us with 5,900 per receiver. I also like this Chicago-Cincy game like I was talking about. So let's go with what happens if we put in Jamar Chase? Still leaves us with 3,500, so we can get Chase in there. Let's go down to the the cheap seats here with the receivers. We got Trey Harris. They might decide to give him more work this week. We got Douglas, who I liked on New England in that matchup. I don't know why Gabe Davis is he should be listed as out. Oh, you know who what? What's the Taekwon? Taekwon is 3,600. So let's find $100 somewhere. I don't hate the Giants defense against San Francisco, honestly. I think that game could go either, any direction, sort of directions. So, there we go. Like that's a pretty stacked team, I think. It's probably going to be a pretty chalky team. I had Corey asking me for a single entry lineup. Like this direction, I would not mind as a single entry. So, there you go, Corey. It should be pretty popular, except for Tyquan Thornton. Thornton will get you a little bit of differentiation against the field if you wanted to use it in more of a large field single entry. But the rest of it should be chalky as hell. Let's clear that one out. Let's go over to Chicago Cincy. Let's go with Flacco. Let me look here at my matchups. God, the running backs both have such good matchups in this one. We're going to go Monangai again. I mean, he's just pretty much a lock button this week against the Cincinnati D that's given up, 33 DraftKings points a game. Let's get Chase in there. I'm going to double stack Flacco. I'm going to get Higgins in there too. And I'm going to run it back with Moore to get a little bit of salary relief there. I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt. Oops. I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt and James Cook and just completely go running back on that game where everybody's going to be hoping for a shootout. Let's go to defense. I'm going to go with the Raiders again here. Let's get them in there. That leaves us with 5,900 for tight end. Let's put Pitts in this one too. And let's see who can swap out maybe. Maybe let's swap out Hunt. You know what? Let's swap out Cook. Let's see what we can get with that extra salary here. We get McCaffrey. So we can put McCaffrey in the final spot there. We'd want to switch him out with Hunt, though, to make sure that we're covering our bases with getting the right late guy in our flex. So, that's a direction that you can go with this Cincy game. And we'll do one more. I like this 49er Giants game as well. And I like it on the other side. I like it going Mac Jones to McCaffrey and Kittle. I'm going to put Kittle on this one. And then running it back with Robinson. Let's put Robinson in this way. Let's go over to running back and get Monangai back in there. Let's get our defense squared away and get the Raiders in there. See, this sets us up to be able to put in like Rashee Rice. We can get Chase in there. maybe. Leaves us with 3,200. Um, 3,200. Let's see who can get in the flex at 3,200. This gets us a little bit different because we only got one of those cheap running backs too. We have options for tight ends. We could get Komet in there. Valdez-Scantling just signed with Pittsburgh, and he has a history with Aaron Rodgers playing together in Green Bay for all those years. So I wouldn't hate going with Valdez-Scantling in this one as a run back for Chase. I mean, for who would that be a run back for? Who are they playing? I guess they don't have anyone in the Pittsburgh game. That was a game that I liked, though. So I'm going to have to build one more lineup after this. Let's get I like that indie game. We'll just build a specific one for that indie game afterwards. Let's see some of these tight ends. See if we can find some value at the tight end position to put in that flex. Juwan Johnson, I talked him up. I don't mind using him. That'd probably be it. If we wanted to swap out Kittle and maybe we go more with, let's put Juwan Jennings in the flex. Leaves us with 3,700 for our tight end. We can get Hunter Henry in there. We can get Theo Johnson in there as a run back. Hawkinson, all these guys on Pittsburgh. So that leaves us at Juwan Johnson. That leaves us with plenty of options. And I kind of like that build, honestly. Just make sure, again, with Jennings, make sure to get your late guy in there as the flex option. Let's clear this one too. Let's do one of those ones for the Indy Pittsburgh build. So I'm going to go with Daniel Jones here. He's obviously got the upside. I'm going to go with Warren, and I'm going to go with Pittman. I'm going to go basic stack here, and we're going to run it back with Metcalf. I mean, that's about as predictable as we would want it, especially if we're doing a single entry lineup. Let's get Monangai. And let's get Henderson in there. And let's go to defense and get that cheap Raiders D in there again. Now, this sets us up so that if we wanted to, we could go Rashid Rice. And then we have enough left over to get in James Cook, like as a flex. So that'd be a perfect run back. I love this lineup. I can see it being chalky depending on DK Metcalf's ownership. He's at 14%, so he ain't cheap or sneaky. Let's see what Pittman's is. Pittman's at 9%. What's Pierce at? You know what? Pierce is at 3%, so let's do something crazy. Let's get rid of Pittman. Let's put in Pierce. That's going to leave us with 8,600. That gives us an option of putting in Jamar Chase if we wanted to. Amon-Ra St. Brown. You know what? I would do this line, and I would just rotate these receivers: Puka, Chase, Brown. I would do that previous build. I'd swap back in Pittman and put in James Cook. There's a lot that you could do with this build. And your differentiator right here is Alec Pierce at 3%. You're only competing with 3% of the field with a super chalky lineup. So I like doing that. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Make sure to hit that like button. Get me to 70 likes so I can put my favorite picks in the comment section. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Get me to 2,200 subscribers. Only need about 70 to get there. And I will see you for the underdog video.